Joe Boyd, welcome to On the Homefront.
Thanks for having me. Excited to chat with you.
Yeah, so great you're on. Been consuming your content for a while, and I know that LeaderCast has been a huge success for you, and you've got something new going on. But man, let's get to know you a little bit. So who is Joe Boyd, and where does he come from?
The nice broad question. I'm an Appalachian kid. I grew up, was born in actually Boyd County, which is my last name, in Kentucky.
Okay.
But not related. Came from about 13 generations of very poor people. And when I was 12 years old, my dad got a promotion. We moved to Columbus, Ohio, which felt like Manhattan because it was so different than Kentucky. So I went to high school there. I was a church kid, total kind of church nerd, and knew I wanted to be a preacher since I was like 8 years old, and went to seminary to pursue that. Along the way, sort of realized that my belief system that I was discovering as a person growing up was a little different than my religious heritage. So that created some tension in my life. So I worked through that stuff early on at the church. And then had a career path that most people think is pretty crazy. So went to Vegas and worked at a church and then stopped doing that and started doing improv comedy with Second City.
Were you doing weddings at one of those chapels in Vegas, or what, or was it?
I was at an actual real church, but I do have a wedding.
Weekends and evenings, maybe.
I got the only job I've ever been fired from. I don't think I've ever said this on a podcast.
Right.
Was the wedding chapel. I got fired. I was the backup officiant at the Luxor wedding chapel in Vegas. So I would do like 2 or 3 weddings a day, and they'd always be like 9 a.m., noon, and like 11:30 p.m. So they were all over the place. It was before iPhone, so I was bad with a calendar, and I totally blanked one. Some poor couple didn't get married because I didn't show up, and then I got fired the next day. So my wedding chapel career was about 10 days long.
Hey, look, half of them don't work out anyway, so you didn't.
Yeah, saved them some time.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Well, that's awesome. So that was we dug out a new factoid on Joe Boyd today. So awesome. So you're in Vegas and pastoring a church and doing the side gig, and then you went into acting or improv.
Yes, improv. So I was about in my late 20s. I was really having a crisis of faith in many ways, but which is hard, which almost everyone does in their 20s if they think a lot about it. But I would happen to be leading a church, so it was awkward. And was doing. My wife signed me up actually for improv classes with the Second City to kind of help me because I was depressed. And I confessed to her, like I say I always wanted to be a pastor growing up, but my secret was that I wanted to be on Saturday Night Live. That's really what I wanted. But it never sounded as noble. So I didn't tell a lot of people that growing up. But she knew, and so she got me, Second City and the Groundlings are the 2 sort of training centers that most SNL people come from. And nobody was expecting me to make it a career. It was just going to be fun. But I took to it pretty quickly. And within about 9 months of training, I was an understudy in that Second City show, and then worked in a show called Tony and Tina's Wedding for 3 years, which is an improvised show in Vegas. And kind of overnight went from working at the church to being a full-time comedic actor.
So you were married during this time?
I got married super young. We're about to celebrate our 30th anniversary. So we got married at 20 and 21. So my line about that is that my wife's been married to 4 different men with the same social security number. So she's a good woman because I've morphed a lot. She's changed, of course, too, but especially early on, I was not the same guy she married 5-6 years in.
Look, it's probably a good thing because you got to keep it fresh. So if you just change yourself out every 7 years, that's probably a good deal. But think about it, though. I know I know a good number of pastors, and that's a high demand career. You're always on call. There's fellowship. There's deaths. There's crisis. So those people work really long hours. they're never called in when, well, if they do a wedding, that's great. But generally there's something going on there. So it takes a toll on people. And I know there's been quite a few failed marriages as a result of the call and the demands of that job. And then, of course, if you're on the Strip, you're probably working nights. Those were night shows. Would do 1 or 2 shows a night? 2?
I did 1 show a night, but 6 nights a week. And the show actually ran it was never dark. It ran 7 nights a week, but everybody got a day off. We traded roles.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it was great. Apart from like the kids were little and I missed bedtime, but I was home until 2 or 3 in the afternoon every day, and then got home around 11 or before midnight.
Yeah. If you had to do an open mic right now, how much you got?
Well, I didn't do a ton of stand up, so I can answer that 2 ways: either 0 or as long as you want me to go. So because I'm an improviser, so if I had to do stand up right now, I'd just start asking the audience questions and go for it. I think I have the skill set to be an okay stand up comedian. I tried it for a little bit. But I found it super depressing. Actually, it wasn't good for me, my mental health, and it's an interesting kind of, I don't know. I don't want to make it, it's like kind of a dark lifestyle. I don't know. It just didn't work for me. Whereas improv, it's more like whose line is it anyway, or something like that. So you're there with a team, and so it's kind of fun to totally bomb with your friends on stage. It's pretty awful by yourself. So but yeah, I could probably fake it better than most people walking down the street, but not as good as an actual comedian.
Yeah, most of those improv skits, man, if it doesn't work, that's even funnier.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, right. And a B plus feels like an A plus because people know you made it up. So
that's great. Right. Awesome. Well, so you went through that phase, and then all of how did you transition from there into leadership and that career?
Yeah, it took quite a few more turns to get to that, but so I was doing that in Vegas, and then I got an agent in LA. It's about a 4-hour drive, so then I started auditioning a lot. So I was doing my shows and then trying to make it as improv people call it a straight actor. Just means like we don't think we're real actors, but we can pretend to be. So I was getting commercials and soap opera roles and sitcom roles and things like that. So eventually we decided to move to LA to kind of give the real acting deal a shot, and spent 3 years walking into rooms every day that people that were just better looking than me, but looked a lot like me. Like that's what auditioning is. Did that. I think I went on over 400 auditions in 3 years. Learned a lot about rejection and failure and how a lot of it's out of your control, and but landed some okay gigs. Started producing a movie because I wanted to kind of show what I could do, really as an actor, but it was an improvised mockumentary, like a Christopher Guest style movie, if you're familiar with any of those. But it was called Hitting the Nuts. It's a poker movie. And so that was the first film I produced, and realized, I think if I was going to stay in LA, I had more chops really as a producer than an actor. And kind of had the realization I didn't want to do that in LA at the time. So in a full circle sort of coming home moment, came back to Ohio where we started, tried the church job thing again, got a job as a teaching pastor at a large church, and it went really great for about 3 or 4 years until I realized it's still not for me. And ironically had produced that kind of rated R poker movie on the side while I was being a preacher again, which was a fun thing to navigate. And that opened the door to producing some more movies. So ended up producing movies here in Cincinnati where I ended up. Actually, it was a little easier here than out in LA, and made 4 or 5 feature films that had various levels of success. Started a production company, left the church job, started a production company with my friends, and ran that company for 10 years. And it eventually did a lot more sort of corporate video, marketing videos for Procter & Gamble's here in Cincinnati and Kroger Company. So a lot of places like that. LeaderCast was one of our clients for about 10 years. And so during COVID, the owner of LeaderCast asked me to step in and run that company. And ultimately, that's how I became involved with LeaderCast. It's hard to tell that story any shorter than I just did, but that's what got us here today.
Now, here's my takeaway: you have an incredible wife.
I told you.
I mean, that's a lot of change, and you have at least some level of explanation you have to do when you're getting ready to make a career change. So,
Yeah.
good on
Yeah.
you. You can sell. So, so,
It's not
but
like
the
it's not like I
production,
was killing it anyway, right? It's like I'm going to try something
well,
else that might or might not work. We'll see what happens.
you know
Yeah.
what? It's seasons of life, man. It's so great to have. I'm in many entrepreneurs. We're all the same.
Yeah.
It's the variety and the newness of something is something that we seek. And I've had 4 or 5 lives within a life, and they've all been great. They've all been time appropriate, and now I'm just in this one for right now.
Right. Yeah.
But no, very cool, amazing story. And the production background as it relates to something like LeaderCast, which was very high production value, is that why that was such a good fit for you? But I guess they had been a client for a while, so you knew the ins and outs of
Yeah.
the show.
For sure. And I mean, you're not supposed to have favorite clients, but they were one of my favorites.
All
I
right.
just really resonated with the message that they had. And in some ways, my church life was always in bigger churches, like churches with 5, 6,000 members. And I was used to kind of that weekly kind of presentation in a big stage, and LeaderCast that's kind of the engine that drove that machine, was a yearly event like that. So it just felt really in my skill set, combining what I knew from church and also what I learned in production. And it was coming out of COVID, very much a startup, and I'm an entrepreneur. I mean, it'd been around 20 years, but it had to be reborn. So that's kind of what I signed up for. And it was hard. It was a struggle. We got it in a good place now, but it was a great company with a great legacy. 22 years, started by John Maxwell way back in the day in Atlanta.
Okay.
And the business model needed completely changed. It needed change before COVID, but COVID kind of almost killed it. And so it took a lot. It took like the height of my ability to sort of lead to get it where it was, and to continue with our theme. 2 weeks ago, I stepped down as CEO at LeaderCast. So I ran it actively for 2.5 years. My hope was always to be able to step down really as soon as I could, and handed it over to a team that's way more qualified than me now to run that kind of company. But I felt like I probably had it in me to turn it around and get it where it needed to go. And I think I did it, but it was a struggle. And now I'm at a season of my life where really, although I haven't actually actively started a brand new thing for 13 years, because the production company sort of morphed into LeaderCast. So I'm actually pretty excited right now to start something new.
Nice. Well, I'd love to chat about that. 1 or 2 questions on LeaderCast. The
Yeah.
scope of offerings there, I know it's an event, but is it also masterminds, classes, programs, materials, other things like that?
Yeah, it's basically an online leadership learning portal now. So
Okay.
the events are still our sort of engine that drives us, but the big transition was taking it from an event company to a 24/7, 365 leadership development platform. So that's what we've done with it. So it's a lot of companies, organizations, government entities will buy seats for their folks, and you'll be able to go in. You get our events for free if you're part of the subscription service, but you also get
Okay.
a ton of classes, kind of like masterclass around leadership from some really well-known and smart folks, and lots of other sort of self-directed leadership videos and content that you can use.
Got it. Awesome. And you're moving into a new season of life. I get the sense, Joe, that you've got a real heart for people. It seems to be
I
kind of a
think I
thread.
do.
Yeah. Well, I
I
mean,
do. I'm an introvert, but I do. Is weirdly,
well,
but yeah.
yeah, but if you want to my experience is that people that want to entertain, people that want to be in front of the group, have something to say, and they want to, have people to say it too. So, so now you're moving into this new venture called Called for Adventure. What's that about?
Good question. Like a good improviser, I started it 13 days ago. So
Okay,
uh, it's
awesome. Well, then we
I did a
called you at the
vision.
right time.
Yeah, I did a vision exercise back in August last year, that I'd done stuff like this before, but I've been putting off doing this because I knew that I really was not in the right place career wise. And I was kind of afraid to do it, but I did it. And it was basically a writing exercise to see where you want to go in 3 to 5 years. And I was shocked what came out of it in some ways. Like it totally makes sense now, but what I wanted to do is help people find their unique calling in the world and take that. I'm a big hero's journey, kind of Joseph Campbell fan and nerd. And this idea of crossing the threshold and receiving a call from adventure and playing a little bit of the role of mentor in that hero's journey when every time in a great story, every time the hero is presented with a call, they always deny it. They're scared. They say no. And usually a mentor comes along and says, no, you got this. And they usually give them a sword or some superpower to use. So I fancy myself, I guess, not that I'm super smart, but I'm old now. So I'm 51. I just turned 50. Oh, it's my birthday today. 51.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to me. Thank you. I appreciate it. 51.
Is it 51? Nice.
So, yeah. So, I feel like I've got, I'm at that great age where I'm old, but not old yet. You know what I mean? Like I got some energy still in the tank, and a lot of failures and life lessons. So calledforadventure.com right now is basically a daily blog that I'm doing and collecting folks that are really interested in finding their calling. This summer, we'll start doing in-person workshops that I've been sort of piloting, figuring out to help people kind of go away for a weekend and come out kind of knowing what's next for them. But I said since day one, I'm not going to pretend like I'm not an improviser. Like there's a basic direction we're heading. There's a clear like North Star that I'm going to help people find their unique calling and live a great adventure. But in terms of business plan, we're making it up a little bit as we go with the people that want to be a part of it.
Who do you expect is going to resonate with the program?
That was I had a hunch it might be people about my age. And when I was talking about it with my marketing savvy friends before I launched it, they said, who are you going to target? You should target, millennials and Gen Y, and because they're younger, they really need to know what to do with their lives. I was like, I can see how this would appeal to them, but I also feel like, first of all, nobody targets Gen X for anything because we don't exist, evidently. People have completely forgotten about us, which is what they predicted. But we're about the same age. When our parents were this age, there were two best-selling books. One was The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren, and the other was a book called Halftime by Bob Buford. And they were both about for boomers entering their 50s. It was kind of it was that time that they started to ask, what's life all about? What's my purpose? I got a lot of time left, hopefully. And I feel like I would like to kind of play that role for my generation a little bit. I don't need to be the only one, but I feel there's a place for me to kind of help people say, okay, and of course, everyone's life stage is different, but a lot of us that chose to have kids in our 20s, they're starting to leave the house, and they're saying we could live to be 120. I don't know if I can, but if some of us still got 70 years left, we should probably figure out what to do with those years, right? And live. How about at least the next 20? At least the next 20, we should figure out.
Yeah, I feel like I'm watching reruns all the time now. I don't know about another 50 or 70 years of this. It would have to get really interesting, Joe. Man.
But that's what fires me up is helping. And so far it's only been a couple of weeks, but just the folks that have connected, I had about 500 people connect, sign up to be a part of it. With no marketing or anything, just kind of word of mouth. So I'm pretty happy about that. And just kind of, I said going in, I don't care how many people are a part of it. Let's just find like-minded folks and start to figure it out together. And it really want it to grow into a community, not just kind of an online platform.
What kind of unique challenges do people have today that maybe in your time as a pastor it has really changed? Everyone talks about, of course, social media, the internet. We have a disrespectful culture now where people have moving from online into in-person to be overtly disrespectful. And it seems to be more so than it used to be, especially when I grew up. You didn't talk back to parents. You didn't do that kind of stuff. So, you know, there's a lot of work to do here in the space that you're talking about. What types of things are you detecting today that were maybe a little bit different than in your leadership roles of churches that you were dealing with?
Yeah, I mean, what comes to mind first is like I feel like everything's more performative, um,
Mm,
and it does tie in, I think, to social media, but or that we're constantly trying to capture uh, moments, especially ourselves in our best light, um, and that's very normal. Like if our parents had social media, they would have done the same thing. It's very human. I think there's an intersection with the technology we have now and our human instinct to have people want to like us and see us in our best light that is sort of making everyone a bit of a performer in a 24/7 way. And that as a performer myself, like I know you can't live on stage all the time, and
yeah.
it'll destroy you. And then you live, uh, for approval and likes. And one of the things I just did my blog today was 51 things I believe at 51. And the first one was, I know one of these is wrong. I just don't know which one. That's the first thing I believe. But, one of them was that nobody is thinking about you as much as you think they are. Like, and the other thing is that's a good thing. People will say like, um, I forgot to say a happy birthday to so and so, so I'm afraid to talk to them because they don't know. Like, and if they do, then what a weird friend to have that would be mad about that. Like, I just
Yeah.
think I think we are constantly assuming because of the world we live in that the people wake up in the morning, look at their phone, and say, "What's Joe doing today?"
Right.
But they don't like. And I think maybe I don't want to age you, but when we were growing up, we still had those insecurities. I did, but it was in real time, and it was with real
Yeah.
face to face, and that was still hard enough to deal with. So I feel like the other thing I would say is we talk a lot about kids growing up this way and how detrimental it is. But my parents are that way; they're in their 70s. Like it's we're all that way now. It's not just kids, and so I think we need to like. It's going to take discipline at some level to use the do not disturb on our iPhone and to go on a walk. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, man. And like, I just wrote down a few comments and, and part of it is, I think we used to be more present because we didn't have a choice. I mean, it was like when you're out, you don't have a phone and you're out, no, your parents can't get you unless they start calling around people's houses looking for you. Like you're with the group you're with. As Deion Sanders said at our conference, he's like, you be where your feet are. Like be
Yeah,
present, like
yeah,
wherever. And I think he hits on that because so many people aren't, man. You're looking at your phone, you're with you see it all the time. I see it in my family, man. There'll be times I'll look around, we're sitting in the same room together, everybody's looking at their phone. It's like, hey, and for me, I don't have a big friend group. Like everybody I know is here, so I don't have to look at my phone. They're all in the room.
yeah, yeah.
Anybody who's going to text me or Snapchat me is sitting on the couch right now. But and then I saw something on the internet today, or maybe my wife was sharing it with me last night. But yeah, she was listening to a podcast, and there was a study that said kids that grew up being outdoors were remarkably happier than the kids that didn't. And I think the inference is that the kids that were outdoors had less time that they were just going from screen to screen to screen, and they were actually out there, and they had developed a little bit more patience. Not everything's going to happen right now. I'm in a hunting stand, or I'm fishing, or I'm doing some of these other outdoor activities, and they become a little bit more resilient, or like for me, even at my advanced age, and I'm older than you a little bit, but I have the same problems with social media that I'm not immune to it,
Mm,
and I'm
yeah.
constantly going down the rabbit hole and saying, that was just 30 minutes that I just absolutely wasted, and now my brain's tired, and I should know better than that type thing. But we're all susceptible to it.
Yeah, and it also doesn't do a lot of good to like I don't know to like pile on we're all addicted to it at some level. So
Yeah,
it's when you're struggling with an addiction, you don't love it when there's someone in your life constantly telling you to stop. Like you got
that's
you got to
right.
figure it out on your own, right? So I
Yeah.
think one of the other things I wrote today is I just think curiosity solves a lot of problems, so when you feel like something needs to change, instead of telling yourself or others around you, we need to, instead of saying, okay, we're not going to use our phones from 7 to 9 p.m. every night, and then the kids are just upset with you for 2 years. Let's ask questions with the kids if they're old enough to process about what do you all think we could do without our phones? What would be fun for you? Like really trying to approach things from curiosity versus we should be doing this or we shouldn't be doing that. Because in my experience, nothing makes people want to do things more than when you tell them they shouldn't do it. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you, it was I went to Seinfeld in New York, and he was at the Beacon Theater, and it was a gift. And I went with my wife, and here's a 69-year-old guy. There was a warm-up act. She was good. She was a popular comedian, and she did well. And before she even got off the stage, he came sprinting out there at 69 years old, grabbed the mic stand, swung it around his head, put it down like a matador,
Mm-hmm.
and just commenced to just crush for like an hour. But the first thing that he did was everybody, because he's one of the few comedians, big time comedians, that doesn't make you put your phone in the bag. So now you go to a show and it's, Chappelle and all, it's like, hey, you put your phone
Yeah.
in the bag.
Yeah.
They don't want their bits getting out there so that people don't feel cheated when they come to see them. They'll put the crowd work out there online, but they won't put
Mm-hmm.
they won't put whatever their bits are right now. And so all these phones are up. And he's like, sure, go ahead, take a picture. You know what? He goes, you and your phones, you're never where you are. Here's what you're doing. You're going to take this video. You're going to miss my show. You're going to take this video. You're going to send it to somebody, and they're going to say, nice. He goes, and then the first time you're going to get to watch the show is 8 years from now when it comes up in your memories. And then that's when you're
Right.
going to get to watch the joke. And it was like
Yeah.
everybody's phone just like he shamed them into
Shame.
putting
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
phones down. And I don't think I saw another phone up for the entire show. I put mine
Yeah.
away, and I felt like I'm not going to pick it up and get a picture because,
Mm-hmm.
and dude, we sat there and had the best time just being present and knowing that we weren't going to have a recording of it. Or any of it. It was about 30% stuff I'd heard before, but about the rest of it seemed relatively new. But it
Yeah.
was really interesting. It was such a mature way to handle it, and it's probably why he's the best.
Yeah. Very smart of him. Quite calculated. And
Yeah,
he's kind of a neurotic freak, but in a good way, I think.
yeah,
I actually don't mind. We saw Bruno Mars in Vegas a couple months ago, and they took our phones, and
yeah,
he did a song, a song that called "I Took Your Phones Away." That's how he
yeah,
started the concert, with a song that he wrote, and it's actually kind of nice. I was like, oh,
yeah.
because I was holding it, so I knew no one was using it.
That's right.
But it was kind of nice. So like, I need to get one of these at home that I can lock my phone up sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, play it forward for me 5 years for you, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
What's you took time to write the vision.
I did.
Can you give us a little bit of insight into what's in it?
Sure. I it was 5 years, so 4.5 years from now. I was doing three things. I was launched this Called for Adventure, and that was my main sort of career outlet. And it was primarily doing these workshops around the world, doing some keynote speaking with it, and then helping folks online find their calling and making a living with that. My wife's a travel agent, so about a third of my time was spent traveling with her. She gets all these. She's going to Hawaii tomorrow. I'm not. So part of my dream is to have a
Well,
job where,
that's a happy birthday for you, sir.
right, uh, I get to go on about a 30% of the trips right now. She does
Mm,
great. So she turns things down. So she could be gone 20 weeks a year on free trips.
yeah,
And so I'm like, I want a job where I can do that or don't have to work all the time. So in 5 years, I'll be traveling with her more. And And then the visioning exercise that I did, you write for 20 minutes without taking your hand off the page about as if it is 5 years in the future. I learned it from a man named Ari Weinswig, who's actually going to speak at LeaderCast this year. So it was towards the last where my hand started to cramp like 15 minutes in. And I was like, I don't have anything else to say. And what was interesting is the last things I wrote was about producing a comedy show in Vegas and moving back there, or at least having a place there. So according to my vision statement, in 5 years, I'm getting ready to put up a comedy show in Vegas.
Oh,
see
man,
how it goes.
that would be outstanding. Yep. Events, there was a lot of consternation about events, about trade shows during COVID. Everything moved online and people said, this is just the way it's going to be from now on. But my experience is that trade shows and events are just making a strong comeback right now. Do you, what have you seen with LeaderCast? I know that you just stepped down as the CEO, but what's been the trends? And then I'm really interested, anything that you could share if somebody was out there wanting to put events on, like what's the funnel to get somebody, connected? Is it pitch the event first and then you get people into the programs, or how do people enter that environment? Like what's the entry point for people inside of an ecosystem like LeaderCast?
Yeah, first of all, trade shows are back for sure. LeaderCast is not a trade show.
Right.
There's always, I guess there's the cynical part of me a little bit that's like, on the company dime, we get to go to somewhere warm and sell our stuff and listen to a few people. And it's not bad. That's the way the world works.
Sure.
And I've enjoyed a trade show myself from time to time. But part of what makes the economy of a trade show work is that it's really networking and cross-selling, right? That's a huge part of it. LeaderCast was never that. It was just a LeaderCast. It was just a leadership event that the like revolutionary thing about LeaderCast 20 years ago was it was simulcast all over the world. So we did this big event in Atlanta with 5,000 people in an arena. And then at one point we had almost 1,000 what we called host sites around the world that would show it at the same time. So 20 years ago it was kind of a big deal to be able to pull all that off.
And that was
satellite.
Was Maxwell involved with it at that point in time? He
started the first year or two. Then my buddy Jeremy Kubicek took it over, and he's the one that really built it out. He's with Giant Worldwide now. Jeremy's a great guy. But so the original pitch of LeaderCast worked great until it kind of didn't, which was going to like smaller chambers of commerce, more rural areas and other places, and saying, look, you can't afford to have Peyton Manning and Seth Godin and whoever on your stage. There were years LeaderCast probably spent $500,000 on honorarium. So the pitch was, you'll never get these people to come to your Chamber of Commerce in Iowa, but you can have them live on video. And then really LeaderCast started a lot of chambers. There was like franchises. So they would actually make a little bit of money at it. They would license it from us, put it up in their community. People would pay $30 ticket to come see it, that kind of thing. Sure. And it was really working great that way. 2016, 17, then started to decline a little. And I think in our world, what really shifted was we still have some folks that do that. They love it. It works for them. It's great for them. But a lot of other people saying, look, we were doing before COVID, we were doing 8 to 12 events a year, and LeaderCast was one of them. And we're trimming that down to 3 or 4. Like that, we were doing too many. So it's not that in that chamber world, a lot of them were hearing back. It's just we don't want to have a full-time person to do all these events. We're just going to do a few. So for us, what we, and the other thing that shifted for us is we started having a lot more private, we say private, but like companies and organizations that wanted to license our content just to show to their people. They weren't trying to make money off of it or do their own event. NASA's one of our biggest clients, Home Depot, Marathon Oil, they just want to show it to their 5,000 people. And so we started to see that, these companies still like the idea of it feeling like an event, but they kind of do want people to be able to watch it at their desk or at home,
Yeah.
So for us, that's what shifted. But it had started to shift just in the culture pre-COVID, and then COVID sort of really changed it. You know, I would say, I don't even know if I answered your question, but that's where we're with LeaderCast. But for folks that want to like just do events, you know, I just think you need to know why, and generally the best events, usually the event itself is not where you're looking to get the bottom line ROI, right? So you
Right.
might do a big event, but it feeds something else. I think it's pretty hard to do like a huge leadership event unless you have someone like a Mark Cuban or someone behind it, like some face that you can draw in, like Dave Ramsey does his pretty well. I'm sure that guy makes money all the time. So,
Yeah.
but you know, I would say it can fall into the money pit category if you just want to put on something really cool and get people there. It's a lot like when I was producing movies. Actually, they used to say you should have at least equal your production budget for marketing. So a lot of people would make an independent movie for $5 million and then have no money for marketing. Nobody's ever going to see it. So I think there are some similarities there. But like, I love the X2 conference in Utah. And you know, that whole thing is just a leader for to get folks interested in their product, which it's totally failing because I can't remember the name of the product right now. the one that does surveys for, I'll think of it in a minute. But so anyway, that's a lot of rambling. But that's how I would think about event stuff. And you know, it's obviously concerts are back, comedy's back, all this stuff's back.
Oh yeah.
But I think in the business world, some of it's a little different than the entertainment stuff. For whatever reason, just feels that way to me. It's not all the business conferences didn't come back. You know, it's a little harder sledding.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it the same way as you. So I've got a business partner that does trade shows, but you know, their real get is leads, people that might want to get into a business. So you know, and I don't know the economics of it, but I assume it's a loss leader. And there's heavy marketing around it. You want to get people walking through. You got education going on there, so you want to stack the value. So there's all kinds of seminars going on all the time. That's well publicized. You can get in there, you know, how to get an SBA loan, how to do this, how to do, you know, just all the different topics that people might be thinking about are happening 2 or 3 at a time in different breakout rooms around the floor and stuff like that. And then there's other people that I know that are moving, doing a lot of acquisitions in different industries. And I mean, they give away a lot of content to get these businesses in their orbit, and just to be able to spend 2 or 3 days with them. And maybe it's only 200 or 300 people in the room, but that might represent 100 target companies that they might want to partner with or something like that. So I think to your point, it's like an event is not the objective. An event is it's a sales tool.
It's marketing spend.
Yeah, it's marketing spend. However, for me, I'm very susceptible to those environments because that's really where you get deep. You're full. When I go to something like that, man, I'm fully engaged. I feel like I'm getting value. And, you know, even with all the business I've done, I'm like, well, I'll be lucky if I can get to talk to these people that, you know, are up on the stage or, you know, having, you know, sharing their experiences and whatnot. So yeah, it's an interesting time for all the technology. And this kind of goes to where I just answered a question for somebody that came in on one of our feeds, and I don't even know what it was, but I did, you know, we had a podcast on AI, and the question was, what are the jobs in the future and the careers that you're going to hire salaried people that companies are continue to hire salaried employees for versus what's going to get eliminated with AI? And, you know, I really don't know from the perspective of saying which, you know, I mean, I know that like AI is doing a lot of coding, it's creating a lot of copy, it's writing a lot of content, it's launching campaigns, and it's doing all this kind of stuff. That being said, if you don't look at it, sometimes it doesn't make that much sense. It's not, you know, it's not, a machine still doesn't have the ability to say, this is an interesting hook. It says this clip's the right length, the right amount of people are talking. I heard these words, but the clip, you look at it and it's like, well, that's, as a human, I'm not at least bit interested in what that thing kicked out. But if you go all the way back to Google and how Google built their company, and there's a great book called How Google Works, and smart creatives. So as we go forward in this world, people not that have the answers, but people that can ask the better questions are going to be the ones that are of high value. And then it gets right back down to we're tribal people. So getting face to face with people, hanging out with people that are warm and that can smile, that can build relationships. Like those are the types of skills that are going to come back and be, I think, of the highest order of importance, because a lot of this other stuff that you used to have to spend a year, coding a program, like you ask the right question now, it'll spit it out for you. Build me Tetris, in code, and here it comes. So, so it's interesting, and I think for a lot of people, and then because of there's all different personality types and learning styles out there, people that, it really can create a lot of, I think, confusion or angst about what people should do with their living, especially now. And I think that's why I get so many questions about that. You get these young 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. It seems to be a particular amount of people that actually get my book Discernment because it's kind of targeted towards them, or, consuming our content, and they're questioning. They're trying to figure out, like, okay, you're an older guy. You've been around a little bit, like, tell me where to go and what to do and where to focus. And, I'm not really sure that I have the right answer all the time for them, which I guess
don't.
is
Nobody does.
No, I don't.
But I hate to keep going back to my list today, but one of them was AI is going to destroy us, or it's not. I don't know. That's one of the things I believe. Like, it was just so early. Like, we don't. It's like it's like the internet being born. No one could actually predict. Of course, we know it's going to disrupt our lives. We know that for sure. We know it's going to bring opportunity, and we know it's going to automate things that are going to take jobs away. We know that for sure. That's what always happens when we. That's what there aren't a lot of wagon wheel salesmen anymore because of Henry Ford. So
that's right.
Like we know that's going to happen. So I think there's some like common sense things. Like I don't know if I'd send my kid to get a coding degree right now, but I also think I'm still a pretty big fan of like pursuing your passion. And I think there will always be a way to do that. I think paralysis would be the thing that I would worry about with younger folks, is that they don't do anything because they don't know where it's going, because none of us knew where it was going ever. Those of us, I think about like things like COVID, obviously, and then like 9/11, folks our age, on September 10th, everything was normal. And then one thing happens that really directly affects a lot of people, but not most of us. And then our whole world has changed forever. So it's always, we believe in a myth of like predictability, right? And so AI is just one of those things that's showing us, no, you can't predict it. But we got to keep going, got to keep marching. Can't be stagnant.
Oh man, Ray Dalio. Have you ever seen his 28-minute video called On Principles, the little caricature thing? So if you go to YouTube and you Google Ray Dalio Principles, there's this 28-minute video. I watched it the year I sold my business, man. I watched it like 50 times. It's the greatest 28 minutes. By the way, he's pretty sharp, made a few bucks. And he talks about, the mistake that he made is that he, in making and bankrupting his company early, basically was because he didn't look far enough back into the patterns. And if he only would have looked back far enough, he would have seen that the pattern was there, but he didn't look far enough back. And people's biggest mistake that they make is believing that the immediate future is going to be some small variation on the immediate past. And that's like, I see that so clearly now. And I think that way. And it's like, well, we can spend all this money because we're just gonna make more, and it's always gonna. I said, there's no guarantee that what's been happening or happened to you once is going to happen again. And so the this this people, and of course we want to get comfortable. We don't like things that change that much, but the rate of change that we've learned to accept since really 2007, when all the things came out, and phones and all of this kind of stuff. But it's potentially accelerating, and at an accelerating rate here. And I think, to your point, what I really like about Called for Adventure is that it puts a sense of purpose into people's minds, regardless of what the universe gives them. And I've said to my kids over and over again, I've said to anybody who asks me, everybody needs an adventure in life. I had one. You had several, including working at a chapel in Vegas.
Getting
I
fired.
mean, like, that's such a great story, right? And like, how many people can claim that they did that? And what'd you learn? And what are the people you met? I can't even imagine some of the couples that came in, what their stories. And did you talk to them and ask them, like, what do you want me to talk about? Or was it pretty much just...
That was such a weird gig. It was they did 4 weddings an hour. So you could do there's 15-minute weddings, and they'd choose if they wanted religious or secular, and off you go. And that was it.
Nice.
That was it's a weird job. I might have purposely, subconsciously, like, got fired, because I don't know if I could have done it for very long.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the things I do deeply believe is that it's our failure and the pain that we go through that actually is what informs our life calling, which is part of why it's a little easier for me to work with folks that have had some measure of pain and failure. Because I think, looking back on it, there's something about having gone through that shapes us in a specific way that's unique to us, that then propels us to do something about it into the world. And if we don't do something about it with our positive instincts, we will end up doing things about it in a negative way. So for me, it's when I talk about being called for adventure, it's a lot of work, some work in what you've done well in your life. You need to take that into account, but it's a lot of work in, especially the repetitive sort of failures in your life and the things that you've had to learn the hard way. For many people, creates a passion to help other folks through that sort of thing. And so I'm a pretty simple guy in that sense of, I think we're here to help each other along, and that we actually, in the second half of our life, whatever that is, where most of our meaning actually comes from. I was offered my dream job several times throughout my life, 5 years after I wanted it. And I turned it down half the time. I was like, so there's something about ambition that gets you to a point of realizing, kind of like it's a little meaningless, a lot of the stuff we chase after. That's very Ecclesiastes, to go back on my biblical roots. Everything's a chasing after the wind, right? But that's such a beautiful day when you realize that, because in our own insignificance, we start to build back a significant role for ourselves to kind of help people along. So I sound like a pastor again. I guess that's what I'm doing.
So
I'm just a secular pastor at this point.
Yeah, well, look, it's a little bit about letting go to regain a toehold again.
Yeah,
in a better place.
And there's nothing more. I always talk about failure gives you humility and wisdom, and it's actually the only way to get it. If you've never met anyone that feels like they've never failed, they probably have, but they feel like it. You don't want to be friends with them. They're the worst. They've no humility, no wisdom. They're just been successful their whole life. No, the people you want when you sit on the porch or when you're an old man on your rocking chair sitting on the porch, you want to be the one that the neighborhood kids want to come up to and talk to, because A, you got stories, but B, you're approachable, because you've learned that these kids are worth my time, right? And you're humble, You don't want to be like hiding in your private jet. You can have one, but you want to be accessible to the world. So that I want to create a bunch of folks that have that kind of spirit about them, or help them become that.
Joe, that's awesome. I'm excited for your new venture. How can people get in touch with you?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, Joe
Okay.
Boyd, and then calledforadventure.com. Right now, it's just a link to my Substack, so you can sign up for free. There's an option to pay. That's just to kind of be supportive. You get everything for free. So if you go to calledforadventure.com, give me your email address, and I will appropriately bother you about 9 a.m. Eastern every workday.
Nice. Outstanding.
All right.
And if, Joe, last question, if you had one sentence to speak into somebody's life and make an impact, what would that be? I know you just did 51 of them.
I did. Hold
on. Pick a good one.
Try not to make it a rant.
Go for it.
Almost every day you interact with someone that's having the worst week of their life, but they won't tell you. So assume it's everyone.
That is beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. So it's about grace.
Yeah.
It's about, treat everyone the way you would want to be treated on your worst day.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well said. This has been Joe Boyd with Jeff Duden, and we have been on the Homefront. Thanks for listening.